Islam, like a precious gem, has many beautiful facets. Join with us now as we discover the facets of Islam. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. I'm your host, Yusuf Estes, and for the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about one of the many beautiful facets of Islam. And in this episode, I'd like to deal with something called balance. And balance is something all of us should be familiar with. Sometimes when we get our statement in the mail from the bank, we look for the balance. And in life itself, we're always looking to find the balance between many things. And Islam offers that balance. The way that we discover the balance of Islam is to go to the Quran, which is the source of everything in Islam, the speech of Almighty God, Allah. And what does He tell us about balance? He tells us about the balance in nature. He talks to us about something called hydrology and how the water works. You know, 1400 years ago when the Quran was revealed, people didn't really know much about things like this. They didn't know how water evaporated and then became a vapor and then condensed and came back down to the earth as rain. They didn't know about these things, but Allah spoke about it very clearly in the Quran and explained about this. He also explained about the balances in nature. He talks to us about the plants, the trees, the animals. It's amazing when you consider the balance of everything in nature. If you consider the position of the earth to the sun, just a few degrees closer, and we'd all be well done. True. Think about it. We take for granted this position we hold in the universe. But yet, if you think about it, if we were just a few degrees farther away than only on solid ice, would we have any room to play? I'm playing with the poetry a little bit because I wrote a poem about this subject some years ago for the children, talking about this balance, this beautiful balance that Allah has us in. And I recall thinking, too, at that time that this planet, this earth that we all live on, that we take for granted every day, has so much in the beautiful balance. Have you ever thought about this? All of the trees, all of their leaves, all over the whole globe, they give off oxygen. Did you know that? Oxygen is coming from these leaves. That's how we breathe. We need those plants, don't we? Without the plants, where would we get something to breathe? And then, when we think about the air that we let out, called carbon dioxide, don't confuse that with carbon monoxide. That comes out of cars. But carbon dioxide. And they said that the plants are able to take benefit from us, from what we breathe out, what humans and animals are breathing out. And I was thinking, look at this. The stuff that comes from us as waste can actually take care of these plants and help them. And what comes out of them as their waste, it's taking care of us. And this is a balance. This is one of the many balances that we find. If we look to sizes, I'm amazed when I consider this, that a human being wouldn't know really what his position was in the universe if it weren't for two things, the telescope and the microscope. Now, when we take the telescope and we look to the planets, we look to the stars, and we discover many things, what we find is that all of these are spheres, orbs, and they're going in orbits, traveling around in these circles that they're going in. And you wonder, how does that happen? How did they get this direction? Where does it come from? Then when you take that microscope and you look under the microscope and you begin to consider things like molecules and atoms, and you learn that they also are little round things going around in these orbits, these cycles that they're going through. And look at this. We, the human beings, are right in between. In fact, we couldn't even see these if it weren't for the optical aid of the microscope and for the telescope. All of this helps us to realize how well placed and situated we are in the universe. When our Creator, Allah, made everything, He put us in the best of places. He put us in a balance. It's amazing, isn't it, when you consider just that? But also there's other balances that we could talk about. When we talk about how the earth itself is balanced, that it won't wobble or shake or drop us off. And Allah speaks about that, and He tells us that He has these mountains that have these long roots that go down, like tent pegs, autad. He calls them autad in the Quran. It says they go deep down into the earth. And in fact, this earth crust doesn't move, doesn't shift around, because this mountain range, this huge system is in place. So this keeps the earth from wobbling. It also keeps the crust from shifting. And all of this is 1,400 years ago. And today, if you go to the books of geology, I invite you to do that. Go to the library sometime. Check out some books on geology. It's very interesting to compare what we find in today's scientific studies and then compare that to the revelation of the Quran 1,400 years ago. Brand new discovery. Revelation, same thing. In fact, it tells us that those roots or those long tent pegs, they go down into the earth for miles and miles and miles. This is something nobody could have guessed. No one could have possibly made such a surmise those many years ago. So this is something really amazing, truly amazing. When we talk about the balance in nature, we talk about the balance in the creation, it's also important for us to talk about the balance of the human being. A human being is composed of more than just bones and flesh and muscle. A human being also has these nerves that cause him to react. And if those nerves get out of balance, then he has a problem. Some of the nerve endings are so sensitive that just blowing on them can cause him to be startled. Others have almost no sense that you can do almost anything and it really won't bother them. It depends on that part of the body, and how did anybody imagine that we would be so well balanced just in our nerves? And then think about this, the mind. How does the mind work? And scientists are still today trying to figure out what makes the brain work, what makes us tick, what's going on in that head. Psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors around the world are studying and thinking and trying on laboratory rats and monkeys to discover what makes the brain work and why is the animal so much different than the human. What is it that makes the human like they are? What is the balance? Where does that come from? And then there's the soul. We have the body, we have the mind, and we have the soul. Now this soul is something that some scientists will deny it even exists. And then there are those who will acknowledge, well, there's something, but they don't know what it is. But for sure, when the soul is not in balance, then the whole of the human being is not in balance. Because the soul is something that's, well, it's amazing, isn't it? In Arabic, we refer to it as nafs. The nafs, which is the inner desires and the things that we look for, we want. This, I need. That's the nafs. Then there's something else called the ruh, which is the spirit itself, the very spirit of the human being, without which he would not have any life at all. When the angel of death comes to a person at the end of their life, that's what he takes. He doesn't take out their brain, he doesn't take out their heart, but rather he removes the ruh. And when the ruh is gone, the whole thing ends. What happens next is, most of you have heard about this, called the Day of Judgment. Now, on the Day of Judgment, there's going to be a balance too. A balance of good versus bad. A scale would be brought and set there, and then a person's good deeds would be put on one side, and then their bad deeds on the other. And when the bad deeds outweigh the goods, this is a serious problem. It could indicate some severe punishment for the person. But then there's something else in this balance, and this is what you really love about Islam, isn't it? there is this thing called rahmah, the mercy of Allah for those who really believed and they really did good works. They tried. They made mistakes, but still, they tried and they repented to Allah. And now all of a sudden, just their good belief in La ilaha illallah can be put on the scale on the other side and then give that balance, that beautiful balance. And this balance is one of the many of the facets of Islam. I want to think about that for a minute and take a break. Stay right where you are. We're going to be right back with more facets of Islam. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Yusuf Estes, your host here on Facets of Islam. We've been talking on the subject of balance. And balance is something very important. Balance in our lives, balance in nature, the balance that happens on the Day of Judgment, which we were just speaking about before the break. I want to come back to that, and I want to think about this, because in Islam we know that there are some things that a person can do which seem rather small here today, but they can be very big on the balance on the Day of Judgment. By the way, the scale or balance in Arabic is called al-mizan. Al-mizan. And it was said that a man would be brought and he would have no bad deeds. This is just a story to help us to understand something about the mercy of Almighty Allah. It said a man would be brought on the Day of Judgment and he'd have no bad deeds, but he'd have a mountain of good deeds. Then they would bring out al-mizan, the balance. And on the one side, they would put all of his good deeds. And then on the other side, there wouldn't be anything. Therefore, look, it would be like this. But then they would take the mercy that Allah gave him for one eye, just one eye, and put it on the other side. And it outweighed all of his good deeds. He would be asked, do you like to enter into paradise on your good deeds or on Allah's mercy? Look what he said. Considering all my good deeds, I would go in on that. But then after he sees this, he said, Allah's mercy is much more than all my good deeds, even for one eye. I'll go in on that. I want to remind you about something. One eye. If you cover up one of your eyes and look around the room. Just look around. Go ahead. I know it's a TV show. Do it. Just cover up your eye and look around the room. Just keep doing that for a minute, okay? What's going to happen, you're going to lose your depth perception. You will not be able to tell how far away something is from you because you only have one eye. But now, go ahead, take your hand off. Got it? Okay. Now, look around the room and you see the depth? And that's because these two eyes are not exactly in the same place and your head is lined up in the center. So the way your brain is seeing this, you see depth. You're seeing three-dimensional or 3D. And this is something that in the movie business, in the film industry, in televisions, with cameras of any kind, they would love to be able to achieve this, but they can't. The screen that you're looking at right now is flat. And regardless of how we try to put an image up there to make it really look attractive, it's still flat. In order to get the true 3D perception with cameras, it's necessary to have them be stationary and have them fixed a certain way and positioned and don't move anything and then take your picture. But as soon as things start to move around, you lose it and you have to work to try to get it back. It's very difficult to do 3D. But look at this. Every day you're seeing 3D and you never even thought to say thank you to the one who gave it to you. This is what Allah is talking about when he talks about the ingratitude of a human being. They're not thankful even for the small things that he gives them. And your sight is no small thing. Consider that. Consider, too, that you see in color. Now, I don't know if you were watching a black and white TV set, but your eyes are designed so that you see in color. Another big gift that we get. What a beautiful, beautiful teaching in Islam to be appreciative and to say thank you to him for each and everything that we have. How can we properly balance these gifts that Allah has given us? And actually you can't. Because no matter what Allah gives you, there's nothing you can give him back that he needs. Allah has no needs. Allah doesn't eat, He doesn't sleep, He doesn't drink. So how can I balance this? How can I give back anything to Him? Well, obviously, it should be that I would ask Him, what does He want? What is it that He would like to have from me? And He's told us in His book, in no uncertain terms, what we can do. He says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. Simply put, He only created us so that we would worship Him alone, without partners. Too many times we find people worshiping the creation. People are looking to the creation of Almighty Allah for something to worship, to say thank you to be grateful to, when in reality, it should be to Him that they give all this praise and thanksgiving. If we could achieve that, if we could do that, then this would be something beautiful. The saying of La ilaha illallah. Try that with me. La ilaha illa Allah. La ilaha illallah. The saying of this on the Day of Judgment is very heavy on the balance, especially if you understand and you mean it, that there is none worthy of my worship, of my devotion, of my love and affection. None is worthy of that except Allah. Now, of course, we've been taught also in the balance of things to be appreciative to the human beings. As we learn from Islam, whoever doesn't thank the people, he doesn't thank Allah. So we must always say thank you to each other and be appreciative to each other for what the people are trying to do for us. The balance in the mind, the body, the soul is all a part of Islam. But there's more to that too. The balance in judgment. How do you judge things? Do you judge with balance? Another facet of Islam, when we talked about that, we found that there is a balance here too. Even if people are against you and you're against them, but still you're asked to judge in a matter, you set aside your prejudice and you judge with fairness and give the right balance. There's another aspect of this beautiful facet too, and that's the ummah of Islam, the nation itself of all the Muslims, because in Islam we know that it's the ummatan wasatan, the balanced nation. The balance meaning the middle path, taking the middle path, not being extreme to the left or extreme to the right, not being so extreme in your work that you don't have time for your family, but not being so extreme with your family that you don't have time for your worship, not being so extreme in your worship that you don't have time for the other things, to keep the balance necessary in your life. This perhaps is one of the most important parts about understanding all the other things in life that are balanced, so that we can give proper time and devotion to our Lord, and at the same time, proper time and devotion to our families, to our work, to society, and the people around us. Extremism is absolutely the opposite of this beautiful teaching, this facet of balance. One of the things that I came to know after getting into Islam is that the good Muslim looks for the things in Islam that put balance in his life and don't distort the beauty of the whole. Because Islam, by the way, also indicates something being whole and complete. When we see people who are spending a lot of time making money, that's what they do. They're very good at it. Or they're famous and they're very good at whatever they do in the entertainment industry, and people see that, and this is what the person does. They spend all their time in it. But then they have no time for their families. We're not surprised when we learn that these same celebrities, these same wealthy or famous people, their personal lives are in shambles. Why? Simply because they don't give the proper balance. When we see people who devote all their time to their family and they don't give proper time to their work, obviously they don't do well in business, do they? And if a person devotes all of his time in physical worship, In other words, he goes to his church or he goes to his temple or his mosque and he spends all of his time. He's there, he's doing things that are nice, definitely good, but again, the family is home suffering. They're not getting their rights. We spoke about this early on when we talked about these facets of Islam, about giving the rights. The rights to the family is very important. How can I give my mother her rights if I never go see her? How do I give rights to my wife or my children if I'm constantly somewhere else, in another country, for instance? You have to have a balance in the life. Now, of course, we know that there are circumstances when a person is put into something that they can't help. It happens to me all the time. But still, I have to strive to find a balance. And when I come home to my family, I need to take time. I need to be with them. I need to listen. I need to be a part of what they're doing. And when I worship Allah, I need to focus on that. I need to really focus on my worship to Allah and not be busied with other things. So when you're in the masjid, if you're in your prayers, in your fasting, whatever you're doing for Allah, think about that. And then when you're at work, think about your work. And when you're playing and having fun, think about that. Any psychiatrist, any mental health counselor will tell you that this is the logical way to give a balance to your life. Be where you are. Think about what you're doing. And don't worry about the other things. You know, my father used to teach us that. He used to tell us that most of the things you worry about are not going to happen anyway. And it's true. It's very true. How many times have we worried and worried, this thing, it could be like this, it could be, and then we find it didn't happen. And the reason, because we're not balancing our life, we're using our time incorrectly. When we're in worship, think about Allah. When we're with our family, think about our family. When we're at work, do our work. Now, overall, this is overall, behind it all, we do think about Allah. We remember Allah in all that we do. And we thank Him for our family, and we thank Him for our job, for our education, for our position, whatever we have, we're very thankful to Him. We don't forget Allah, but we do try to keep this balance, this important balance, this beautiful facet of Islam. And I pray that Allah will always keep us well balanced as Muslims.